Hi, welcome to Let's Talk About Love Stories from Everywhere. I'm your host, Jill Ferguson, and today my guests are Doug Cornfield and Dave Clark. How are you today?
Good. Good. Thank you for having us.
Love stories. I don't know. I don't know if I should have brought him with me. That's probably not what I should have done.
Well, we're going to talk about one of the things you guys love in life, which is your company, right? D3D, which the URL for it is d3day.com, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that. Like, why did you start it? What is it?
All right. I'll start this time. So I'm the Doug of the Dave. So I got Doug and then Dave, and then we actually have another Dave Clark, that we brought into or Dave Stevens that we brought into all of this. So I have a son that was born with neither arm developed, and I have an athletic background, was a full scholarship athlete at the University of Georgia, was around sports my whole life. My father was a world-class athlete, but also stayed in the sporting goods industry, so he worked with some big companies and was a sales rep all over the East Coast. And so I was around a lot of top athletes from the time I can remember, so as a very little child. And so if you flash forward through my career, his career, and 2000, I'm transitioning from Atlanta, Georgia to Corning, New York. And I'm reading an article in a coffee shop, and while I was studying for my Series 7 to work with Merrill Lynch. And here I'm reading this article on a break about this man who played professional baseball on crutches. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't, I know what kind of level you have to get to be a professional baseball player. And here's this picture of this guy pitching from his crutches. And probably the strangest thing about that article for me at the time was it said that Dave Clark, this guy to my left, is from Corning, New York. And I'm like, oh, wow, that really doesn't make sense. I mean, Corning's only like 10,000 people big. I mean, it's a big Fortune 500 company in the middle of town. It's glass history, all those things. But it's a very small town as far as population. So I get up to my brother's office and I'm like, who's this guy, Dave Clark, that played professional baseball on crutches? This makes no sense. And of course, my brother Kurt goes, well, I know Dave. And I'm like, well, why don't I know Dave? But my brother had been in Corning a lot longer than I had. And so as it would be, this man to my left, he had played 10 years of minor league baseball on his crutches, which, the stories to get there are pretty amazing. He wound up blowing his elbow out in the Swedish major leagues. Then he coached, because when you can't play anymore, what do? You coach. And so he coached successfully in the Swedish major leagues, really at first. Actually coached your own team. He bought his own very famous team, the Indianapolis Clowns, back in 1983, which is could be a whole nother segment of story right now for us. And then he coached and he managed in the Swedish major leagues and won 3 championships in a row at their highest level over in Sweden, and with the World Baseball Classic going on.
My wife in Sweden, and now future wife.
Right.
So
future wife.
Do you speak Swedish?
No.
just to yell at umpires.
Here's the thing: anyone 40 and younger in Sweden speaks English.
Yeah.
Because it's required in their school. So I wasn't forced to transition to the language to communicate. And that's bad. If you want to learn a language, if you're forced to do it, you tend to learn it, and I wasn't.
Well, he doesn't even learn how to use a smartphone, so I don't know if he would have ever learned how to learn Swedish language. But I know he loves Swedish ham. If you want a story that's pretty unique. And anyway, so I've read about this guy to my left, and then, before you know it, we become friends. I met him at a baseball field with my son, who has no arms. He was coaching a minor league in upstate New York, in Elmira, New York, and he was coaching. After the game, I went around the dugout, asked if we could meet. He had some press things that he had to take care of and talk about the game that day. And then we met for breakfast, and we built a friendship, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I built a friendship, and then and just one thing led to another. I left the Merrill Lynch world, and when I left, I said, Dave, I want to do something with your story. We've got to do something. And so I built this huge business plan of doing all these marvelous things, of which we're still working on, including movie deals and books. And I wrote a children's book along the way, another compilation book that he's the inspiration of, called Pulling Each Other Along. And but the main thing, when we met for our meeting years ago, and I can remember this meeting, And Dave said, well, Doug, what I really want to do after I put all this time and work into proposals and all that stuff and business plans, Dave says, well, what I really want to do is more sports camps for kids with disabilities. And it's literally become our journey, our last leg journey of putting on these events for children and young adults. So if we have a passion and a love for something right now, for me, it's to get parents and children on the field to explore their potential, let them play with professional teams on a professional field. And Dave can tell you a story about how that changed his perspective and what we do today. But as a father of a child with real similar, severe limitations, I get to introduce to these families and the parents a guy that didn't let his limitations hold him back. And then another guy, Dave Stevens, who was born with no legs and 3-sport athlete in high school and college, and in regular able-bodied sports, not disabled sports. And he is a 7-time Emmy Award winner with ESPN. He's highlighted in a movie, The Saint of Second Chances, with Mike Beck, and so we get to go around and do these things, and it's truly a privilege. But it's also a lot of work, and we need support and help. So there you go. Is that the long-winded way to answer your question?
It did answer my question. And now, if you'll pass the microphone to Dave, I want to hear, how did you get involved with sports in the first place?
I think, Jill, the main motivation at the beginning was acceptance.
Okay.
There was no Challenger Little League back when I was that age. If you wanted to play in my circumstances with pretty severe limitations, I was either going to play against able-bodied athletes or I wasn't going to play. Challenger Little League, you can get me going on that. Challenger Little League is great, but don't pigeonhole somebody with limitations into it until you fully see what their capabilities are, because I am certain, had there been Challenger leagues when I was that age, I wouldn't be talking to you today, because I would have been pigeonholed into the Challenger League and I wouldn't have been fully able to reach my potential. So we got to be careful with what we do there. But I think, to answer your question, it was acceptance to begin with. All the other kids were playing sports, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be. We all want to be part of that group as we grow up, whatever the group is, and but that grew into a love for really ice hockey.
So did your
and
parents push back at all against you saying, I want to do this?
Never.
Awesome parents, right?
And that was I always say that was a key to that, and a third grade teacher. Definitely a key to the path my life ended up taking. I didn't. Once I came out of the reconstruction home after spending a year in it away from my parents, they didn't treat me any different than my other brothers, and my brothers didn't treat me any different. I mean, we had knockdown, drag out, punching fights, just like any other kid, and I got no pass on those fights. They knock me down, I get up, knock them down, and looking back, and I mean, that's not good to say, but that's life.
Can we talk a little bit about going into, like, why was it decided you needed to have this special kind of experience right at a reconstruction home and the surgeries and things?
Yeah.
And how old were you?
10 months old. Yeah, it was 10 months old, and both my parents have passed now, but I learned from that, because my memory, obviously I didn't remember anything, but from the stories they told me, I got sick and they thought it was the flu, and the doctor diagnosed it as the flu. And back in the 50s, polio was the COVID of the 2020s. And so they let it linger for 3 more weeks, and I still hadn't recovered, and they took me back again. And this time the doctor said it's polio, and he's got to go into a specialized facility, which they called a reconstruction home at that point. And this was in Ithaca, New York, about 40 miles away from my hometown of Corning. And, one of the things my mom told me about that experience was she got to visit twice a week. And she'd make the 40-mile drive and 80-mile round trip. And Dad, we were not blessed financially, so Dad had to work. He made occasional visits, but not like Mom. And she told me how heartbreaking it was to visit me because I looked at the nurse as my mother. So when my real mom would come in, I ran from her to the nurse, and she said that broke her heart. But being in that reconstruction home, the first meeting they had with the doctors, they told them wasn't much chance of me making it. And I can only imagine, what that must be like for parents. And then they went back 2 weeks later, another visit, and the doctor said, I believe he's going to make it through, but he's never going to have any use of his muscles. It's going to be a vegetable. And that's the exact word he used. He's going to be a vegetable. And then a year later, I came out with 2 full-length leg braces and crutches walking. And so, by the grace of God, I got through and then joined my family and was treated just like I said. My parents never told me no. They didn't let me get in the middle of a railroad track with a train coming down it, but
They did.
but they did, didn't they? But
They didn't know.
I remember when I went to my mom and said I want to play ice hockey, and she looked at me in strange eyes and she said, "Ice hockey?" I said, "Yeah, I want to play ice hockey." And she thought about it for a minute, and then she said, "I'll tell you what." She said, "Okay, you can play ice hockey, but the day you come home missing a tooth is the end of ice hockey." I still have them. So I was able to play ice hockey. Unfortunately, my ability in ice hockey only got me to the college level. So
Well, that's still pretty impressive.
there was a lot of rubber behind me, so I was a goalie.
Okay. Yeah.
But so anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your that formative years. I never felt different from anyone else until I got to grade school, and then it was a different story.
And how did you deal with that? Like, because I'm assuming you were what we now call mainstreamed in the school system, right?
Yeah. There was no,
Uh-huh.
it's either you go to school and you do the steps up and down, or you're not going to school. And my parents, both of them were, I don't want to say they were strict, but they were old school, and I was going to school. They're not. I got no pass there, so I was mainstreamed, and it was my first experience of being bullied. Because I walked differently. I took a little bit more time to go up and down steps, in and out doors, and so I was called all kinds of names. I was physically abused. You asked how I dealt with it. Probably shouldn't say this, but I was a kid that never backed down. I might lose a fight, but you were going to hurt when I lost it. So I can remember having fist fights and breaking a kid's glasses and getting called into the principal's office, and he was a Gold Glove boxer, the principal. And I remember I was 8 years old, and he sat me down and he said, "I hear you like to fight." And I was like, and I'm shaking. I mean, we all knew he was a Gold Glove boxer. He goes, "Would you like to fight me?" And I'm, no, sir, no. And he said, and then, he reprimanded me for breaking the kid's glasses. And I was saying, yeah, but, he was doing this. He said, we don't handle things that way. And but all through my life, I've never backed down. I'm not that big. Back in the day when I was an athlete, I was pretty strong. I could hold my own, and you had to. I was given a lot of gruff, a lot of bullying. And I don't know if we have a lot of time here, but I
We're
could
good.
tell you a
Yeah.
story. I can tell you a story that ultimately led to probably a lot had to do with what we do today for the kids with disabilities. It was first grade, and the teacher announced a walking field trip to the local fire hall 5 blocks away. All the kids were ecstatic because they were going to get out of the doing homework that day. Not me. I wasn't. The anxiety started to build right then and there because I knew I was going to slow the class down, and I knew the bullies were going to have a field day with me by me slowing the class down. So she announced it a couple weeks ahead of time. So I had 14 days of anxiety build up. The day finally came, and I tried to fake sick. And I woke up that morning and said, Mom, I can't. You're not sick. Get your braces on. You're going to school. Went to school. Teacher said, all right, line it up. We're getting ready to go. And my little 6, 7-year-old brain did the only thing I could think of, and that was wait till the line formed and go to the end. Because I figured if I was at the end and they got way ahead of me, if they didn't look back, I would catch up. Well, just before we pulled out, a little classmate of mine, never forgot his name, Ernie Pound, pulled a little radio flyer wagon up. He goes, Dave, I brought this to school for you today. You jump in, I'm going to pull you. Took a weight off my shoulders, and Ernie pulled me to the fire hall. We went through the tour and jumped back in to get pulled back to class. And even the bullies wanted to take turns pulling Dave.
Oh,
And so that turned that whole day around. It made it a day of inclusion for me instead of exclusion.
mhm.
And that stuck with me. And I never forgot it. Ernie moved out of town after first grade. His family moved to California, and I never saw Ernie again, but I never forgot what he did. So when a writer approached me about writing a book on my life story, I made sure that was in the book, that story, and I thanked Ernie in the book. And I'll let Doug finish that story.
Yeah.
So I was one of the ones pushing Dave to write a book after I got to know his life story. I was like, yeah, you got to write a book, and actually helped him package it to the printers and to the publishers and all that kind of stuff, and was able to read the book prior to it even going off to print. So I'd read this story a couple times, and then when the book finally came out, because at that time I was marketing for our own seminars at Merrill Lynch, and so I just did the same thing, but I marketed for people to come and for a book signing for Dave. He's a bit of a legend in Corny, New York, for the people that know him. And so we had these 5 locations set up over a couple of days, and during that time, I was rereading his book in my office. Because we had set up some interviews on radio, and I was getting the television involved, all that kind of stuff. And when I was rereading that chapter 2, he tells stories of people that really saved him. And of course, Ernie Pound saved him that day. And every time I read that story as a father with the child, my little boy was just little at that time, I'd get the goosebumps. It was a goosebump worthy story, as you would say. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I got to try to find the people from this chapter. And I looked for him, and I actually looked for your phys ed teacher at the time as well. But I found that Ernst Pound in the phone book had one of those awkward phone calls from my Merrill Lynch, probably, ID, all that kind of stuff. He didn't want to come to the phone because I was going to sell him something, of course. But that wasn't the case. I just wanted him to know that he was thanked in this book. And I got him to come to a book signing. And he came the 45-minute trip because he was living 45 minutes away. They hadn't seen each other since first grade. And as soon as he came into the door, it was a snowy night in Corny, New York. I don't even know how many years ago now. It's crazy how long ago this was. And so he comes into the door. He has his teenage son with him, and I knew it was him. I'd never seen him, but I knew it was him. Go up, I give him a book, and the books weren't even mine to give out at that point, but I just give him a book, and he gets in line, and I got cameras rolling. Unfortunately, it's not 1080p or 4K or any of those things back then. He gets in line. He gets up to Dave. Dave's been signing books. It was a pretty long line that kept coming that day. And he looks up and Dave says, "Who should I sign this to?" And Ernie just basically says, "We'll sign this one to Ernie Pound." And this guy became like a little 30-year-old girl, just crying. And so they became very emotional. They hugged, and I caught that on video. It was one of these perfect moments of just deep, deep, deep gratitude that you can't fake. And I got to capture that, and I got to, in essence, really create it and help create it. And so I didn't realize I was going to leave Merrill Lynch at that point, but literally a couple years later, I wound up leaving when Bank of America merged with Merrill Lynch, and I told Dave I wanted to do something with this story, and I got him a speaking event in Orlando, and he shared that story for the first time. Of course, cry. I mean, got very emotional sharing that. One of the reasons he has me share the reunion side is because that gets him still today.
Yeah.
And so instead of him wasting time with dead air on a podcast or at a speaking event, I typically share this particular portion. And we shared that so much, it became an award. It inspired an award that we give out at our camps. We look for unsung heroes like Ernie Pound, and we have what's called the Pulling Each Other Along Award. And it's based on people that are helping others, specifically usually in the disability space. And it's really one of my favorite things that we get to do. We get to honor those unsung heroes that have these stories nobody knows about, that they're helping people. And then along the way, we wrote a children's book. I was able to write a children's book.
Do you have it sitting there with you?
I do.
Show it on the screen.
Although I'm so low on my personal inventory right now, but this is called A Pound of Kindness for Ernie Pound, that little pound of kindness that's never forgotten. And of course, I'm super proud of this book because it tells such a wonderful story of an anti-bullying story, and we never even use the word bullying. But it's this is the way you should be. This is the way you should act. It's really a modern day Good Samaritan story from a perspective.
Yes.
And it was never forgotten, and we've been able to share this story all over the country on podcasts, on stage, at our camps, our events, and we want that story to still go out to, hopefully millions of people someday. I really believe it should be in millions of hands. And so that story then created, COVID happened and all those wonderful things with COVID. And so we found 30 more great stories, and we wrote a compilation book called Pulling Each Other Along. And that's like a chicken soup for the soul version. Again, all inspired by this one little story of kindness that happened now when he was, we won't tell you how old, but when he was, 6 years old. And so it just goes to show, when you have this little act of kindness can really mean so much more than people ever thought.
So, Dave, how did you go from playing hockey to playing baseball?
Well, I played baseball right along.
The seasons are different.
The thing that's different from today is, and don't get me going on it, but the parents specialize today. If my kid's good playing baseball, that's what he's going to play all year long, baseball. And they get travel teams. We didn't do that. We played every sport that the season was for. Baseball season, we played baseball. Football, we played football. And I even played basketball as a kid, and then hockey in the winter. And so baseball was what I was, I guess, I never thought I was that good, but what I was good enough at to advance. Let's put it that way. Baseball was the sport that and I say hockey, baseball's right there. It's 1A, 1 and 1A, and but baseball was the one that I was blessed with enough ability to get where I got to. So I had played it all along. A story, when I wanted to play Little League, they wouldn't let me. Officials in the Corning Little League said that no, he can't play. He'll get hurt. And my parents went, no, he won't get hurt. Yes, he will. My parents literally drove to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the headquarters for Little League, which really is only about an hour drive from Corning. And they met with officials down there and convinced them to get Corning to let me play. And the rest is history. I mean, I ended up playing and I did well, and I started advancing as I aged out, playing at different levels, and then when it came time to back then every kid dreamed of playing professional baseball. That's what the dreams were. Baseball was America's sport back in the 60s, and when I got about I'm saying 14, 15, I had aspirations to take it as far as I could, but I was afraid to tell anybody because of how absurd that dream probably was. And the first person I told was my grandfather, who worked at the Corning Glass Works, as almost everybody did in Corning. And he looked at me and he said, Dave, why don't you get a real job at Corning Glass, a secure job? And I'm glad I didn't listen to him. So,
it's amazing in some ways, like the decisions that people around other people, right, make fear-based decisions and liability issues, right? Like the Little League saying, no, he's going to get hurt, meaning it's liability for them and they're afraid. And your mom's like, no, I'm not afraid. Let's do it, right? And your grandpa's, it's afraid. What happens if you don't meet your goals, and how are you going to respond, and all that other kind of stuff, right?
One of the things you cut me off if we run out of time because I can keep going. But one of the key lessons I learned later in life, after I had finished my career, 17 years in all, playing career, 17 years. 1988 was my last season, and I was sitting in a rocking chair at my parents' house Sunday afternoon watching NFL football with Dad. As I was watching the football game, I noticed on my right side, Mom had come up and she was just standing there. She wasn't saying anything. And I caught her out of my peripheral vision, and I looked up and she was holding an envelope. And she put it down in front of me and she said, read this. The first thing I noticed was the postmark was 1971. Second thing I noticed was it was sent to our neighbor at the time. So I opened it up, this percolating through my mind, what the heck? And I opened it up and I read it. It was a reply from the Pittsburgh Pirate scout that signed me to my mom, a reply to my mom. So immediately I realized she had sent him a letter unknown to me. And from reading his reply, I put two and two together that she had written this letter, figuring I was never going to make it. Please let him down easy because it's been his lifelong dream. And the scout wrote back, he'll be judged solely on his ability, and if he makes it, fine. If he doesn't, he'll be let go just like anybody else. I looked up and Mom was crying, and she said, "How could I have ever doubted you?"
Oh, that's gonna make me cry now.
And so that proved a point to me that I try to get across to all parents and people. Don't put your doubts onto somebody else.
Yeah.
Because they never let me know they doubted me.
Yeah.
but they did.
Well, and
And
you bring up an amazing point because fear is one of those things that's learned, right? It's not
yes, it is.
a newborn baby is not afraid out of the womb, and the baby absorbs what's going on around it, and that's how it learns how to react. And so it's amazing for your parents, even if your mother had that concern or that fear in the background, that she wasn't showing it to you, right?
Yeah. So the main thing for me as a parent with that story, and this is a message that we try to portray when we can, especially to families with that have kids with challenges and young adults with challenges, is that it's normal to doubt. I mean, it was normal for his parents to doubt that he was going to play professional baseball and have a 50-year career in baseball, but they also knew how passionate he was. And so they were a little protective, obviously.
Mhm.
But the biggest point that as a parent that I get out of that story with his mother is his parents never made him feel that doubt. And that's the point we want to get across. It's I mean, if you have kids that are athletes, whether they're able-bodied, disabled-bodied, or whether they're a singer or they want to get up, be the next American Idol or on The Voice or whatever they're trying to do, don't project your doubt on them. Let them find out where their level is, and they might very well surprise you, obviously, as Dave did.
Yeah. So you just briefly touched saying, you were an athlete at Georgia. What was your sport or sports?
So I was kind of in the same era as him. We played every sport growing up. I could have gone baseball. I played fast pitch softball because we had really competitive fast pitch softball in the Pennsylvania area when I was growing up. I played basketball. My dad was a semi-pro basketball player. He was a world-class runner. So I gravitated toward the running side, and kind of like him in a different way. I played basketball all the way through my freshman year, but I realized, and I won a small college national championship in the 800 meters my freshman year in college. And I was like, you know what happens if I really train? And so I wound up going out for cross country, dropping the basketball. And then I probably lost 15 pounds during that period of time, maybe even more. And it wound up leading me to a full scholarship at the University of Georgia as a track athlete. So did every sport, but the way my trajectory went, it became track was the highest level. And again, I had dreams of getting to the Olympics, and I just missed the Olympic trials in '88, and there was no money in it back then, so it was kind of you had to make your next choices.
And
But I had love for all sports.
did your son play any sports?
My sons, so I have 4 sons. So my one son with neither arm was not an athlete. I mean, he got him in soccer, and we actually have a really cute story that I can remember when he was in soccer at his young age. It was a cold day, and everybody had like vests on. This is upstate New York, and the YMCA was one of the assistant directors was actually out there refereeing as well. And he comes up to my son. Now, I was the kind of dad that was always coaching on the sideline, so I was either an assistant coach or a coach or whatever, especially with Gideon in this situation, because it was an able-bodied soccer team, even at 5, 6, whatever years old. And then I saw this YMCA referee go up to my son, trying to get him to get his arms out of his jersey.
Oh,
And of course, my son's like 5 or 6 years old. At this point, he doesn't even really know he's different because we never really talked about it. We just let him be himself. And this referee is like, "Hey, son, you got to get your arms out of your jersey. Get ready to play." And my son's looking at him like, "What are you talking about?" And unfortunately, I saw this happening because this was not a big, a vicious treatment of my son or whatever. It was just an honest mistake. He didn't know. And so I fortunately saw this. I went up to him and just gently went up to his ear and I said, "Hey, listen, this little boy doesn't have any arms." And of course he had that shocked look on it, like he was about ready to lose his job. And I said, no, that was an honest mistake. No worries. But fortunately those things happen. And my son Gideon wasn't much of an athlete. Now he's thrown first pitches with his foot and been a part of our programs and all those kind of things. My other 3 sons were all pretty high level athletes and specifically in the track world. With my oldest son is really one of the top track and field distance coaches in the country and world. He's the director at Northern Arizona University, and he's won 6 national championships, and now he's over the program and he's coaching Olympians, coaching all sorts of fun stuff.
Wow. So that's one of the things I actually like about your organization is that it has like serious sports cred. Right? It's not people who have hardly played or have only played X sport, right? And you guys have been there, right? You've been on the teams. You've been through your own personal training to level it up as high as you could go, and you've also dealt with limitations and everything else, and so I think that makes it more heart and soul into.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right. And and one of the things that we don't often talk about as much, because obviously the fun of getting 80 to 100, 120 children and young adults with disabilities on the field, and but the impact that Dave has on these young pro and college players, and the other Dave too. So I don't want to minimize either one because they really have an impact. They go into a locker room. He puts his coach's hat on. He tells a story, which again, we could tell other stories, these impact stories, and these guys are glued to Dave. But he's been there. He knows what it's like to wake up on a Saturday morning after a late game, and and travel, and you have game after game after game, and now you're supposed to get on the field in a voluntary way, and so he gets to speak to them. But the impact, like last year, we had the Phillies organization, and a coach named Greg Brzezinski that I had met the year before. He actually volunteered for our camp when he was the away manager. This was at the pro level. He was giving up his Saturday morning when he found out there was a disability camp. So I got to meet him. He saw what we did, and he comes to me. He says, "Doug, I've tried to do things like this, but you actually know what you're doing. I need to bring this to my team." And he did. So we hear a lot of talk sometimes, and people never take action with it. But Greg Brzezinski took action with this, and we did it with his team last year in Jersey. He had every player. I think he had every staff member that he was over participating. And the unique thing that happened there is that Dave goes into the locker room, tells his story. These guys are all glued to him. They're listening to his perspective. We give them perspective being out on the field. But then the next thing that happens is they were a losing team prior to that, our event. No chance of making the playoffs. They go on this huge winning streak, end out the year a winning team, and we're knocking on the door of almost making the playoffs. It was a huge turnaround. They should have done the camp 2 months earlier with us, is what I'm thinking. And so anyway, so it's that kind of impact that is not just for the participants, and it's for the employees that are sponsors with us that come in and participate. Obviously for the parents and the caregivers, even though we're doing it for the kids, so to speak, but it goes much deeper than that.
And your camps they're multiple sport, right? And they're also co-ed.
So it's all ages. I don't even ask whether you're male or female, because it really doesn't matter. It's just everybody's included. I mean, we're starting this dugout movement that I'm trying to get moving, where it's like everybody's welcome in our dugouts. We want everybody to be involved. It's all ages. At that same Philadelphia Phillies event we did last year, we had the oldest participant ever. He was from a group home. He was 76 years old. Awesome. And he was out hitting baseballs with us and having fun, and we interviewed him. And so, yeah, it's all ages, all different disabilities. And, when I say everybody's welcome, it's pretty much an all welcoming scenario. Just as long as you're kind and not trying to hurt anybody, you're welcome. And that's our motto.
And is there a cost for the people who want to participate to attend?
So not for the participants. There's obviously a lot of cost that goes involved. I'm down in Florida right now, organizing, hotels and plane flights and rent a cars and whatever. But the t-shirts, hats, tickets to the food, the whole bit. So there's extensive costs to our events. Yeah. And even there's cost of raising money. There's people don't realize if you're running something like this, there's a cost to all of these things. Yeah. And but as far as the commitment that Dave and I made, is that we would never charge one dime to these parents. Mm-hmm. And we never have. All the camps that we've done throughout the years, and it's made it hard. It's made it difficult. But we don't want to limit anybody. I mean, even the cost of parking could keep somebody from coming. Mm-hmm. In these cases, because they're so tapped out with their medical expenses. And, even sometimes I've had people, if they weren't close to one of our camps, the cost of gas money, could be an issue, just that extra cost. So we've taken upon ourselves to say, no, we would never charge for this. We let people donate if they choose or whatever, but our people that come, the participants, that's not typically where the money comes to fund this. And we don't put a big emphasis on that part of it. We just, we want them to come, enjoy, have this experience and be lifted up. And we try to carry the financial burden in other ways.
And you do events all over the United States, right?
We have,
You're open to.
Yeah. If it's funded, we'll go anywhere, and because we have the Dave Stevens and I have other people from my book, but we've been from California to Florida to Connecticut to Tennessee to North Carolina to New Jersey to New York, and we've done hockey and baseball because you asked if it's different sports. We've been a little bit involved in football in a different way. We haven't done a full out Disability Dream and Do football camp yet with flag football and fun stuff like that, but it's not limited to even sports though in our minds. It's Disability Dream and Do acting, it's Disability Dream and Do music, it's Disability Dream and Do opera. It's like whatever activity where we can have somebody that has a limitation or challenge to get to experience from high level teachers. That would be, that's our model.
So, and how can people get involved? I know that on your website, it's like you can donate, you can volunteer, but talk to me about, they can buy books because the proceeds go to that.
There's small ways. Obviously, a donation of any amount can be done, but sponsorships start at usually like $1,000 for our simple sponsorships, all the way up to $30,000 for a naming right sponsorship, and it can, obviously you can do bulk that together if you have somebody that's listening that's like, oh my gosh, we need to bring this all over the country. But like a little thing that I'm doing right now, and I can probably put this, give you the link or whatever. We're doing a little with our children's book specifically because I have the most inventory of this right now. It's a beautiful book. We have boxes of 30. Normally we ask like a $500 donation or contribution to get a box of books. We're doing that for $350 right now. We'll ship it to you in the US. And I think it has a $5 shipping cost or something like that. That doesn't cover the shipping, but that's not the point. So we give you a whole box of books of this great book, and you get to share kindness with it.
It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. We'll have the URL to your organization on there. You are set up as a 501c3, right? So
that is correct. We actually have a fund called the Disability Dream and Do Fund, and then the Dave Clark Foundation is a 501c3, and then we have a business as well. So if people want to hire us as speakers, sponsor us, a lot of that funnels through the business of Best Burn Enterprises, actually, for that. And there's a whole story behind that one, of course.
Well, I really appreciate both of you taking the time and to be on the show and to let people know what you do and where your passions lie, because it's definitely, you can feel how passionate you are about it. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you having us, and we are passionate about it. But when you get 80 to 100 children on a field jumping up and down, so excited when they hit a ball or run around the bases or give a high five and all the things that we do, it makes it pretty easy to be passionate about it.
And I think you said before that you sometimes invite Special Olympics and Wounded Warrior and other organizations to.
Yeah, for sure. We just was talking with Star Ability and right this morning from Naples, inviting their group to us, and Dave wants to say something, so I'm going to let him go.
One of the very first camps that I ever did was at a VA center.
Nice.
We have a model now that really works. But back then we did it 5 days in a row. We would come in on a Monday and go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And the vets just loved it. We did it at a VA center. They just loved it. So, we that's where some of this evolved from.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.